Hi, I'm Tony Russo from On Death Care, and this is The Rest, your weekly roundup of funeral service news. Before I get into today's show, I want to, as always, thank my paid subscribers for their support. We had some more of you come on this week, and it has been great. Thank you to everyone who supports this show, whether you support it monetarily or not. The fact that you're out there listening is huge. We just had another bump in subscribers and another bump in downloads, and it's just cool that people are getting this into their eyes and ears and brains. So thank you very much. If you have not subscribed to either the newsletter or the podcast or both, you can do all of that at ondeathcare.com. There are multiple subscription levels. The most popular one is free because everything that I do, with the exception of the weekly Sunday column, is free to all the subscribers and everybody on the planet. But if you subscribe, you get it first, and you get to show your support for this crazy funeral news project that I have undertaken. But anyway, we're going to get right into the news. I just wanted to say thanks. Let's get started. Earlier this week, I got an email from Joe Weigel, who runs his own marketing company. He does a lot of bigger companies. He does smaller companies. He does individual funeral companies. And he shot me this email because he's a listener, I believe. Hello, Joe. How are you doing? And he knows how interested I am in earned media. And he had a little earned media victory that he wanted to share with me. And I want to share it with you because it's something that you can do. I mean, absolutely, you should get Joe's product and do that. But if you want to do this on your own, it's something that's easy enough to do. And I think that's why he shared it with me. So one of his clients, Oak Grove Funerals and Cremation, is holding a community event. And so Joe reached out to the local paper and said, hey, we'd love it if you could send someone out to do a story on the event. And they said, don't count on it. But if you want to send us a press release about the event coming up and send a couple photos, that's great too. Now, this is the trick. When you're dealing with small newspapers, particularly small local newspapers, find a photo and send it. Photos are really, really, as I know you can make all you want on AI, newspaper people don't make AI things for the front page of their publication. So Joe sent along a press release with just a photo of the funeral home on top, and they ran it. They ran it on the front page, and he sent it to me. He sent a screenshot, and they said, hey, yeah, he sent them a note saying thank you for the placement and thank you for the coverage. And they said that was great of you to send along. And if you take photos of the event, send them too. We'll run them as well. The thing is, and having worked at a lot of these very small newspapers, they don't have photographers anymore. They really don't have writers anymore. And so a lot of the time, and this, I mean, I was doing it 10 years ago. A lot of the time you have a space to fill and you need a photo, and you grab the best photo that you have gotten recently from one of the dozens of people who still submit photos. So sending the photo was brilliant. It always increases your chances of getting in. This was a photo of a building. Photos of people are always preferred by newspaper folks, and I would be shocked if they didn't run a couple of the photos that get sent from this event. So just remember, you're having an event. It's absolutely free to invite the local news people to come and to send a press release if not, and send something with a photo, and don't make it too salesy. And you would be surprised the number of good responses you get. We've spoken about earned media before, so I don't want to beat this to death. So I just want to say congratulations to Joe. And don't forget, no matter what you're doing, send a photo to your local paper. They are dying for photos. Now, if you're not a regular advertiser and you're sending them photos every week, you're going to find that you're not likely to get a lot of coverage. But if you're either a sporadic advertiser or a sporadic sender of photos, your odds go way up. If it's something that they think that the community will genuinely be interested in and genuinely enjoy, they're happy to have the space, and then that's one less story they have to pay someone to write. And that's increasingly important for these small independent weekly style papers. So anyway, there's not a link to this in the show notes because the newspaper's website is kind of non-existent, but you're just going to have to trust me. I'll put a link to Joe's business, and I'm sure that he'll have it there. I'm embarrassed. I don't remember. It's called Weigel Strategic Marketing. Sorry, Joe. I'm sorry it took so long to look that up. But anyway, congratulations to you, and link to Weigel Strategic Marketing in the show notes. I want to take a second just to talk a little bit about the Pine Rest Funeral Home financial scandal that broke last week, I think, maybe at the end of the week before. It's been an ongoing investigation since March. A gentleman named Tim Street, who is a former manager of Pine Rest Funeral Home in Alabama, he was arrested last week and charged with first-degree financial exploitation of the elderly. That's not going to look great on his LinkedIn bio. The investigation revealed that he accepted allegedly thousands of dollars from grieving families for headstones and grave markers, but failed to deliver the products or deposit the funds into the business account. Some families waited more than 2 years for markers that were purchased but never delivered. The Alabama Board of Funeral Services is also looking into this, as are the regular police. And now that the story's been out, people who have been patiently, I think, waiting for their headstones from Pine Rest Funeral Home are starting to come a-calling and saying, hey, wait, is mine some of the money that I've just heard was stolen? One of the real concerns for me, and I've not had a lot of luck reaching out to them, so I don't want to beat anybody to death over this, but this is not independently owned. Tim Street didn't own this funeral home. This was owned by, I guess, a small consolidator or a large investor. It's Gamble Holding Company. And, I've not had a lot of luck trying, and I'll continue to try. I also reached out to the Alabama Board of Funeral Services to see if the holding company is in any way responsible for this. But it's got to be a concern, right? I mean, how do you have an employee spend years stealing thousands of dollars from families and it not even... I mean, they should at least ask him why he wasn't selling any headstones at some point. So I'm interested to see how a scandal like this can occur with a lower level employee of this magnitude, because it's chilling. They've got a couple of funeral homes, I think 3 or 4 in the region. I do not know. They had purchased, there was a company that went out of, that didn't, well, yeah, that was a company that sold out, a smaller consolidator that sold out, and they bought some of those funeral homes. So I'll have hopefully a story on it the week after next. I'm off this week. I'm off on the 4th of July weekend week. But in the nearer future than you think, I'll try to get more information on this to share it. But I mean, if you are a small consolidator, or, I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you this if you're a large consolidator, but if you have 3 or 4 funeral homes and all of a sudden you're not making any money in some place where you used to make money, you should check that. I don't want to keep banging the PE drum on this, because there are really good consolidators that I've spoken with, and they often speak up after I say something like this. So I apologize in advance, although you are welcome to send me an email and tell me why I'm wrong. Like, if you're just looking to see how much revenue is generated, you're easy to steal from. I think everybody knows that, right? Does everybody know that? I don't know. Well, if you don't know it, I think now maybe you do. Anyway, there's a link to this Pine Rest Funeral Home financial scandal in the show notes. And as I said, I'll try and get more information on Gamble Holding and what the Alabama Funeral Services Board of Funeral Services is going to do. At the risk of shocking you, the neighbors in Napa Valley near a proposed green burial cemetery are losing their minds because the Howell Mountain Cemetery wants to be a green burial cemetery instead of a regular cemetery. And I think that they just don't want anything at all. It's the common thing. And I would feel bad for these people if I thought they were genuinely this stupid, but they're just mean. And that's what bothers me. They're afraid of traffic. They're afraid of poisoning the groundwater with human bodies. You know, if you were to go to Napa Valley and say, okay, I know that you're afraid of decaying bodies poisoning the water, so we're going to have to raise your taxes by 35%, and we're going to hire a bunch of park rangers to pick up everything that dies in this forest and carry it out of the forest to prevent your water table. I'll bet they'd be a little bit more interested in what happens to a decaying body that doesn't include poisoning them and their children. It's embarrassing that they talk like this. It's embarrassing that they act like this. It's embarrassing that I have to report on this every week. They're just, babies throwing tantrums. And, it's Napa Valley. So that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, hopefully they will win in court. They're going to do a study to see if all of a sudden there's a problem with the water table, and they're going to have to do a traffic study to see the parade of people that are going to be driving to this cemetery every day. Well, I can't go out at 2:00. It's visit grandma time, and there's a traffic jam in Napa Valley of people trying to get to this green cemetery at 3:00 on a Tuesday. It's embarrassing. Anyway, link to this in the show notes if you're interested in seeing it. If this were the other way around, I would be aggressive. I'm going to be less aggressive because I don't have the whole story, but the Marion County Board of County Commissioners in Florida recently voted to table a permit for a proposed pet water cremation, and this is, they say, Aquamation facility for 60 days, despite a recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission. County officials hesitated because the applicants lacked precise data on daily water usage, equipment specs, and environmental impacts. And now the NIMBYs were out, and that didn't help. But, you have some responsibility as a person asking for a permit to know what your machine does. And I know that when you get these water cremation machines, there's extensive training, and they don't just mail it to you like IKEA, and this is stuff that you should have at the top of your head. And if you're going to a hearing and people are a little nervous already about this weird quote unquote type of disposition, you should have your ducks in a row. It's not too much to ask to know how much water you're going to be using. It's not too much to ask for you to present a plan. You need to present more things. If you have not gone before a planning council, no one has ever said, oh, that's too much information for us. They might tell you to be quiet after they've made their decision, but you don't want to not have an answer for these people, especially if you're doing something that for some reason keeps making people nervous. So, best of luck to them. Hopefully they'll go back, and hopefully they'll have everything written down, and they'll have good answers, because this is pet cremation. I don't want to create a false equivalency, but I rarely hear about pet cremation, getting nixed. Human cremation, people lose their minds. Pet cremation, and aquamation, tends not to be an issue. But anyway, I have a link to that story in the show notes. I reported about this a couple of weeks ago, and I've gotten some more information, so I wanted to share it. You may recall we had Beth King on the regular On Death Care podcast, and she was talking about how things are different in Australia. So not too long ago, there was a story about a young woman named Jessica who was killed in a car accident and had a really bad job done on her restoration. And reading the story, I didn't understand it. So to punish Beth for letting me have her email address, I shot her the story, and I said, I don't understand what's going on. And what I had missed is that although viewings are common, unembalmed viewings are actually pretty common in Australia. So you need an embalmer's license to embalm, but you don't need a license to prepare a body. And a lot of funeral directors without license and without proper or enough schooling prepare bodies at a lesser standard than someone who does. And that's something, unfortunately, you don't know until you find out, which is what I heard from Adrian Barrett. Adrian Barrett, he's a graduate of Ontario's Humber College Funeral Service Program, and he did his internship at R.S. Kane Funeral Home in Toronto before moving to Australia and opening his own funeral company. And he said that having standards kind of sets, obviously it sets him apart. And when he saw this in the paper, he reached out to the family and he went and he did a good restoration job, still without embalming Jessica. And he was very proud of it. I think he was joking, but I think he was only half joking where he said, if it was ethical, I'd send you the pictures because I did a really good job. And I love how people who work on bodies get such joy out of doing a good job. It's the thing about craftsmen, right? Craftsmen get joy out of doing a good job for the good job's sake. But anyway, as we talk about like separating embalming from funeral directing here, one of the things that we always say, or we said in the recent education pieces, and I'm sure in future education pieces, is you have to know how to prepare a body for viewing for a family, even if you don't embalm it. You have to at least know what looks good and what doesn't. And the people who botched Jessica's original viewing didn't even know that it looked bad. They said, this is just the best that can be done. And what they meant to say was, this is the best we can do because we don't have any skills. But in the hands of a skilled craftsperson, this can be done properly. So anyway, there's a link to the story in the show notes. And thanks, as always, to Beth King for being my Australia correspondent, like it or not. Finally, this week I got to speak with a guy named Brad Kochnicki, and he is running the show at the Independent Funeral Group, which is a buying group that has decided to start expanding. They've been around for about 30 years, and mostly they were trying to keep things small. Now, I had a chat with Garrett Casey a couple of weeks ago, and you may remember that story when he was talking about the difficulties that he was having in Connecticut, or the difficulties he felt that were going on in Connecticut with private money coming into the area. And one of the things that he told me that I didn't get to include in the story was that he had a little buying group, really just, a couple of colleagues who he didn't really compete with, but were in the same area. And they tried to negotiate price together as a small concern. I know this is a kind of common practice. And that's what the Independent Funeral Group was doing until about a year ago, according to them. And now what they're doing is they're trying to expand to allow more members, to solicit more members. And it's an interesting project. So it's really just a buying group, and all the details are in the story. I just thought it was maybe an idea whose time it's come. I know that there are lots of associations you can belong to get that give you discounts among certain things. And I would just encourage you to take a look at this and to see if this is something that would be useful. Anyway, so there's a link to the story in the show notes. If you were a subscriber, you got it in your email box yesterday. So that's one of the other reasons that I'm pressing for people to subscribe for free, to at least get the news before I say it on this show, or at least sometimes. The rest has been an On Death Care production. It was written, edited, all the things by me, Tony Russo. Thanks as always for listening. I know that your time is precious, and I know that everyone wants your attention, and I'm an everyone, and I want your attention, and I'm glad that you gave it to me. I try to value your time, and I try to take the fact that you're subscribed seriously. If you have not subscribed and you weren't convinced at the beginning of the show, let's try here at the end. Please go to ondeathcare.com, where you can subscribe at any level, including the free level. to get the newsletter when it comes out and all of the stories and all of the reporting I'm doing. And finally, thank you to everyone who's reached out with stories. I wrote a story about Pierce Mortuary College a couple of weeks ago, and since have been, the recipient of more stories about some of the troubles that are going on there. And I'm going to have something a little bit more even-handed, I believe, probably in late July. But until then, keep your eyes out. I've got lots of other good stuff coming, and I'll talk to you next time.